But first, we're number 27. We're number 27. How cool is that? When you look at the 34 richest countries in the world, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD countries, and you look at the relative wealth of their middle classes, we're number 27. You thought we were number one? You thought we had the strongest middle class in the world? Well, we did before Reagan, but we don't anymore. 32 years of Reaganomics, we're now number 27. Austin Petersen is on the line. He's the director of production over at FreedomWorks, freedomworks.org, the website. And Austin, here we go. To 32 years of Reaganomics, 32 years of neo-libertarian philosophy. I mean, pure libertarianism is called feudalism. We haven't completely gotten there, but we're moving in that direction. And this is what it brings us.
Not necessarily. I mean, if you think about it, look at the countries that are above us. Who wants to live in Cyprus, Kuwait, or Qatar?
You ever been to Cyprus?
Yeah,
life is good in Cyprus.
Cyprus isn't bad, but they're not doing very well with their currency right now. They've got a big problem, but the problem is not with the distribution of wealth. The problem is who has access to the wealth.
No, the problem.
First.
First of all, the problem Cyprus has is that they have an economy dependent upon banksters. Their
correct.
entire economy is based on hiding banking things, and that's not good.
It's not about hiding banking things. It's about devaluation of the currency and non-transparency of their banking system.
Yeah.
You see, people all over the world have been fooled that they need a central bank in order to manage their money supply. But what happens is that when you give the banks control of the money supply, you see what they do time and time again.
But Cyprus is at the bottom of the pile with us and Kuwait. Australia's at the top.
And it's
Japan's at the top. Italy's at the top. Belgium's at the top.
But
Italy and Belgium don't even have a central bank.
But Japan is not the beacon of innovation that they used to be because of their central banks. You remember during the boom time of the 1980s, the Reaganomics that you so despise, there was a great inflationary period that happened in Japan. And what happened was when those banks finally collapsed because of the weight, they went in and they zombified those banks by bailing them out. And we're doing the same thing here in the United States. I mean, I would rather live in the United States than Japan because at least we have innovation here in the United States. But if you want to talk about wealth stratification, you have to look at the monetary policy of these countries.
No, you don't.
And I think this is where
it's
you
got
and I
nothing
can
to do with
actually
monetary
agree,
policy.
Tom. It does, because what happens is that the middle class has to pay a higher percentage of their income into necessities. The richer people who don't care about inflation, because the middle class, they don't have to spend as much money on their...
We don't have inflation right now, Austin. What you're suggesting is that our middle class has been wiped out by 32 years of Reaganomics because basically
Tom,
we've been inflated into not having, or our currency has been deflated, when in fact... the top 1% are doing just fine. In fact, the top 20% are doing just fine.
But Tom, you rail against the financial elite and you rail against banksters, and then you say that there's no inflation, when you know for a fact that goods like gasoline and milk and other essential items that people have to buy have been rising at a rate of 5 to 8%. So if you say there's no inflation, you're taking the government. You're carrying the government's water, because they're saying
these are not things unique to the United States.
They're not unique to the United States.
And therefore, that's not why we're number 27 in the world. We're number 27 in the world because it used to be that the wealthy people in America earned about 30 times what the average worker did. The CEOs earned about 30 times what the average worker did. And the reason that they didn't earn more than 30 times was because when you hit 30 times the average worker's salary, then a 74% income tax rate kicked in, and people didn't want to pay that. And so they just said, I'll just settle for $3 million a year income. That's enough. I mean, that's what CEOs used to make. Lee Iacocca famously made, $1 a year for 1 year and then $1 million a year after that. George Romney turned down a bonus.
The problem is that if you're looking at wealth disparity, you're forgetting about class mobility, and so you're assuming that people who are the haves versus the have-nots are always the haves. And what happens is
increasingly they are in the United States because we have drastically since Reagan reduced social mobility.
No, we have more social mobility than we had since Ronald Reagan.
We do not.
The issue is, if you have a large...
There are absolute measurements of that, Austin.
The same people don't always...
Social mobility is down in the United States. In fact, the United States and the UK, of the 34 OECD countries, the United States, the United Kingdom, and Singapore are the three worst.
Well, what you want to do is you want to talk about what is wealth stratification. And if certain people in certain countries are closer to the rich, then what would it matter if you're living in a poor country?
Wealth stratification is a function of taxes.
No, it's wealth stratification is a function of monetary policy.
No, it's a function of how money is distributed in the society. And the major variable that determines how money is distributed in a society is taxation.
Tom, I don't understand how it is that you can rail against the banksters and then go ahead and spew their propaganda by saying that there's no inflation. You sit there and you say that you're a champion of the people, Tom.
You're going back to a tiny slice and arguably a straw man argument.
Them out right now. I'm surprised it didn't come from a meeting from Barack Obama right now, because Ben Bernanke loves this. You know, these are their talking points. This is what they want.
Are you trying to tell me that by cutting taxes from 74% down to 28%? For people making over $3 million a year on their $3 million and first dollar, and going from CEOs making 30 times what the average worker makes to making 600 times what the average worker makes, that had no impact on the fact that our middle class has gone from being the strongest in the world before Reagan to number 27 out of 30 out of the 34 richest countries now?
No, what I'm saying is that the rich people in this country are going to hire less people, and there's going to be less of a middle class because there is no economic policy. You're not talking economics, Tom. You're just saying that
rich people don't hire people because of how much money they have. They hire people for businesses.
You don't have any
because there's demand for their goods or services. If you're talking about rich people who are business owners,
Tom. Economics is a social science, okay? It's not a perfect science. It's not mathematics. You can't just say, okay, well, these people have a lot of money, so we're just going to take it from them and then give to other people. That's not economics. That's just theft and communism.
No, that's neither theft nor communism. That is called progressive taxation. And all the other countries in the world that have stronger middle classes than us, like Austria and Canada and France and Norway and Finland and Great Britain and Iceland and Belgium and Italy and Japan and Luxembourg, they all they all have higher tax rates on the very rich than we do.
No, the middle class needs, why would the middle class want to stay middle class? Nobody wants to stay middle class, so why are we trying to take
Actually, my dad was very happy to be middle class. I think the vast majority of the middle class would love to simply be in the middle class.
We should inspire the middle class to be the higher class. We want people to go off and be rich people, Tom. We don't want them to be comfortable.
You're selling snake oil, Austin. Are you telling me that 100% of Americans can become billionaires?
I'm telling you that.
Or should.
No, of course not. That's utopian, Tom. That's what communists believe.
No, it's silly. That's why when you peddle it, it sounds silly.
Libertarians understand that economics, the way the free market works, is that there will be a simple stratification of wealth, but that a rising tide lifts all boats.
Well, it's a nice slogan, and I suppose it works in a marina. But I don't think, Reagan has demonstrated it doesn't work here. Anyhow, Austin Petersen, you can read all about it at freedomworks.org. Thanks for being with us, Austin. Good talking with you. We'll be back.